Good afternoon, everyone. We are studying the book of Numbers, and today we are in chapter 28. We left off last week discussing on how the daughters of uh, Zelophehad, right? Zelophehad was not around, and in the counting of the heads for the purpose of inheritance would have excluded them all the way. And so there were a number of fine tuning that was done. And at the end of the day, God saw that some of these were good. And at the end of chapter 27, we left off with the principles of dividing the land in terms of the allotment. And God is a fair and just God. Now, when we come to chapter 28, it reads this. Now, the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, command the children of Israel and say to them. And there were a number of things in chapter 28 that most people don't quite like to read because it's about rituals, it's about food, it's about offering, it's about the manner of what God wants the Israelites to do. And so let us be mindful that this chapter itself contains some very pertinent information with regards to who God is, not only in terms of the details of certain rituals and offerings, but really to tell us who God is. In chapter 28, after God spoke about the dividing and the allotment of the land, God turns to Moses and say, this is what you need to tell the children of Israel. The children of Israel, in other words, the sons of Israel. Now that you have idea or inkling of how the land is to be divided according to the heads of the male household, now I want all of you to understand who I really am. Chapter 28 very much speaks about who God is. Now, if you take a look at chapter 28 from that viewpoint and ask ourselves, who is God? What is God saying about himself in this chapter? Then you will realize that a lot of the details do not really matter to us as much. Why? Because we are not Israelites. And so it is not speaking to us in terms of how to conduct rituals, but it is speaking to us to tell us who God is, as much as God is revealing himself to the sons of Israel at this point in time. So let us be mindful of the words, the choices of words, the intent, and all the details that is encapsulated in this chapter. First of all, I like to draw our attention to this phrase. This is talking about God's land. They are going to inherit God's land, and God is going to give them God's rules. So, chapter 26 and 27, right? This is 26 to 27. It talks about the land. And now in 28, it talks about the rules. And what is in common right here is that it is all about God. He gives the land, he gives the rules. There is no such thing as I just give you and you just do whatever you want. God gave the land because of the relationship that God has with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And now he's talking about the sons of Israel, the descendants of the forefathers. And in so doing, there are rules that they must keep. And so we bear in mind in chapter 28, we are talking about God's rules. And God's rules has everything to do with God himself. The first thing is God says, my offering, my food for my offerings is made by fire as a sweet aroma to me. You shall be careful to offer to me at their appointed time. In this one statement contains so much about God. First things is this. God says, my offering. Well, we don't make offerings like how the Israelites make offering. And so let us understand this word offering. The word offering is korban. That's the name, that's the word here, korban. And when God says my offering, and you notice korban has something that you bring as a sacrifice to God. And for much of these offerings, there is a slaughter and there's a dealing with blood to be spilled on the altar all round. And so blood and offering goes hand in hand. And that's the word in Hebrew, korban. Now, the second word here is my food, right? My food for my offerings made by fire. Now, there are two parts here. When God says my food, it literally means my bread. My bread. And the first thing that you may think of is like, hey, this sounds like how the Chinese people make offerings to their gods. Not that the gods will come down and consume the food, but it's like an offering given as to gods as food. But here in the Hebrew culture, into the nation of Israel, God says, offering would be anything that you bring to me and anything that you slaughter for me, whether it is for atonement, for peace, for completeness, for thanksgiving, a free will, whatever that may be, it is to be made to me. And so we need to understand that if it's made to God, it has to be in God's terms. And hence we say God's land, God's rules, God's offering, God's food, God's rules. If it's for God, then God has something to say about it. And so here in chapter 28, he's got lots to say about it. My food literally means a symbolism of giving something for God to consume, right? To consume. So that's a very symbolic view of food. And these are animals, whether four-legged, two-legged birds, or whether it's flour, whether it's libation of wine. It's an offering. It's considered something that God will consume. That hence the word food, right? Lechem. And it says, my offering made by fire. In short, it's said to be my fire offerings. Now, fire offerings means that these are offerings that will be burned on the altar, and it has to be by fire. Now, one of the things that we have always heard in terms of a phrase would be that God is a consuming fire. And the word that the English use, consuming, is literally eat. And so fire is also symbolic that whatever is in fire will be destroyed. In our terms, we say it is destroyed. But in the terms of an offering, it is seen to be consumed. It's as if God ate it up. Right? That's the picture that we're getting from the offering. The third part here is a sweet aroma. The word sweet aroma is reach nichoshi, right? And basically what it means that it's a spirit of satisfaction. The sweet aroma, as translated in English, tells us that as the offering is burnt, the fat and things like that will rise up in its smoke, and there will be a spirit, a breath, a fragrance, an aroma. And that's the root word is ruach. It is that kind of a connotation. And so in this case, the spirit of satisfaction means that this aroma, as it's going up towards God, towards the heavens, right, that we say, is very soothing. It's very restful. It's very delightful that God will be happy with it, and God will be appeased. God will be satisfied. That is what it means. And this hereby tells us God's rules is to tell us how to deal with these rituals that he's describing, that the sons of Israel must follow. Why? My people, my rules. My land, my rules. If you want the land, you want to stay in the land, there are rules. And so let me tell you a little bit about who I am. I want you to follow my rules to know who I am. I am a living God. I'm here so that you can approach me and offer to me. So God says, you shall be careful. The word here is to guard or to keep. To keep when you offer. Now, again, English is really peculiar. This word does not mean to offer. This word actually means to cause to draw near, right? Cause to draw near. And the final word here, appointment time or appointed time, is the word moed. And we have seen that when we were doing the holy days. These are appointments or specific times that God has appointed for the sons of Israel to come out to specific places to do specific things. And so these are appointed times. Now, when we read in Genesis chapter 1, when the sun, moon, and stars were put in place, it was there to give appointments for appointed time, so that the sons of Israel knows which year, the start of the year, which part of the month, and which day to do these things. And so in verse 2 itself describes to us as God is a detailed God. God has specific things that he wants done, and he wants those specific things done in a specific way. And they are to do it at a specific time. And so we can see in one verse itself, we can see so many things. We could see what is being done, how it's being done, when it's being done. Right? All of these are important because it speaks of who God is. Details matter to God. Now, the other thing you would see here is that these details are not out of the world. You're not asked to climb the mountain, swim the seas, crawl on your knees. No, God wants them to do things which they are already familiar with, but to do it at the right time, with the right intent, for the right purpose, to the right God. And so God says, be careful. Take very good care when you come to me at your appointed time. Now Moses is then told, you shall say to them, this is the offering made by fire, the fire offering, which you shall offer. You shall approach. Right? This word is approach. To God. You're not to approach anything else. There are no other Elohim who has taken you out of Egypt. You only do this to the Lord. The Lord, the Yod-He Vav-He. Right? The Yod-He Vav-He. And these are very specific information. Two male lambs, male, and it has to be, in this case, in verse 3, two male lambs. And this word here, male rams, would be rams, right? Young rams. This is male sheep. Now, in the English, not all lambs are sheep. Like in Exodus chapter 20, when it says lamb is a different Hebrew word. But this Hebrew word that we are reading here literally means sheep, of the sheep kind, but they are rams because they are males. They are supposed to be in their first year, just like Exodus 12. Without blemish means they are perfect. They are complete. They are not sick. They are sound. They are not impaired. That's the word, without blemish. And then you are to offer it, well, it says here day by day, on an everyday basis. Everyday basis. And it says here as a regular burnt offering. An offering made by fire is a burnt offering. It's an olah, right? Olah. What does olah mean? Olah comes from the word Allah, and it means something that rises up. And when they have an offering made by fire or a fire offering, you burn the offering and smoke rise up. And that's why in English it calls it the burnt offering, which doesn't have any direct connotation to the Hebrew word, but it gives you the idea. It's something that will rise up when you burn, and that's the smoke. Now, this word regular. This regular means it would be a continuous. Continuous. It means that the tabernacle, or eventually the temple, will continuously have fire offerings or burnt offerings. And this one you must bear in mind. Now, why does God want to do that? It is to make sure that people continue this ritual on a regular daily basis, as if God is there watching and waiting for his food to be brought to him. That's the picture that God is painting right here. Then it says in verse 4, it says, one ram, let's forget about lamb, one ram, that you shall offer. Now, this word offer is no longer approach. This word offer is make. You make this offering in the morning, and the other you shall offer in the evening. Now, what does this mean? In the morning, when it gets bright. In the evening, when it gets dark. Right? This word here is boker and eref. And then we read of specific instructions, like 1/10 of an ephah of fine flour as a grain offering, right? As a grain offering. And there are such offerings. It's not just animals. There's also libation of wine and then grain, mixed with 1/4 of a hin of pressed oil. And this pressed oil would be olive oil. It is a regular burnt offering which was ordained at Mount Sinai for a spirit of satisfaction, an offering made by fire to the Lord. At Mount Sinai, they were eventually given all these instructions. And it's drink offering, right? There is a grain offering. There is also a drink offering. Shall be 1/4 of a hin. 1/4 of a hin. A hin is about 6 liters. So it's about slightly more than a liter, liter and a half for each lamb or each ram. One in the morning, one in the evening. In a holy place, you shall pour out the drink to the Lord as an offering. Now, let me point out to you this word, pour out the drink as an offering. What drink? This is strong wine. God doesn't want water. God wants strong wine. Now, is there a difference between wine and strong wine? There is the concept when you press the grapes and the early press of the grapes before they ferment, they are more or less grape juice in its fermentation stage. But when the fermentation sets in, you get strong drink because of the presence of alcohol in the wine. And God wants that one, the fermented grape juice, as an offering to God. So there is something to eat and something to drink. And this is something that reminds us that God wants us to eat and drink. And as the ritual is to remember that God is there all the time, that is why they have to make this happen. Now, read the other lamb. So one lamb, you do it in the day. So the other lamb, you should offer in the evening. As a morning grain offering and its drink offering, you shall offer it as an offering made by fire as a sweet aroma to the Lord. Now, understand these words that you shall offer. This is you shall make. And then the final word is also make. It is not approach. You see, here it is approach. Here and here and here, it literally means when you do this offering, right? When you do this offering. Now, God is specific. God wants certain things done the way He wants it done. It is not out of the world. It is not very difficult. It's something which they can all do, but God wants it done in a specific way at a specific time. Verse 9, on the Sabbath day. The Sabbath day is the seventh day. It is supposed to be a day of rest. And God says, 2 lambs. So you say 2 small rams because they are male, right? Not female. In their first year, without blemish, whole, good, not lame, healthy, perfect. And 2/10 of an ephah of fine flour as a grain offering, mixed with olive oil, with its drink offering, which would be strong wine. All right. And this is the burnt offering for every Sabbath. And look at this word in verse 10. This is to be made, this is the burnt offering, to be made, this word here is in addition to. On top of the regular burnt offerings with its drink offering. So it begins with the drink, it begins with the daily offerings. When you have the sunrise, and then you have the sunset. All right. So what is going to happen is you've got an offering at the time of the sunrise, and you've got an offering to the front of the sunset. Come the Sabbath day, you shall make 2 more. And so these 2 are to be made in between. They are not made together. And so on the Sabbath, there are 4 offerings. That is what it means up to verse 10. So God is now being very specific, very detailed, but it is not out of the world. These are things they can do. In verse 11, Now we have to pay attention to some of the Hebrew words. At the beginnings of your months, this one would mean the heads of your months, which means that on the first of each month. That's what it means. On the first of each month. That's the head or the beginning of that month. You shall present a burnt offering to the Lord. Means that you shall approach God. This word present is to approach God with a burnt offering, 2 young bulls, 1 ram, 7 lambs in their first year. Again, the 7 lambs will be the 7 rams in their first year, baby rams, without blemish. Now, let me just emphasize this point. Without blemish. This was the problem the book of Malachi had in chapter 1. They brought blind animals. They brought crocked animals, broken leg. God wants everything to be perfect because this is for God. And why does this matter so much? You see, when the sons of Israel obeys this, all of these rituals, according to all the details, what does that mean? It means that the relationship is correct. God is God and man is man. The man is doing and making offerings according to what God has so demanded in every aspect. How, what, when, why. All done so that we can see without blemish means they will treat God as extra special. They will treat God as God. That they will not deviate from what God says because it is for God. So the ritual is not just a mere ritual. It is to demonstrate that the sons of Israel knows God and respects and honor God as God. Otherwise, you say, oh, okay, I don't have flour. Let me use some sand. I don't have a ram. Why don't I just take a snake? You just can't do that. God's house, God's rules. God's land, God's rules. And God is showing, I am God and you are my creature. Follow what I have to say and everything will be fine. 3/10 of fine flour as grain offering, mixed with oil. Each bull, 2/10 of fine flour as grain offering, mixed with oil for the 1 ram, right? So the bull has a way of doing it. The ram has a way of doing it. And then 1/10 of fine flour mixed with oil as a grain offering for each ram, right? These will be 7 baby rams. Baby rams. This would be a adult ram. So that's what God is saying. This is an adult ram. As a burnt offering of the spirit of satisfaction, an offering made by fire, a fire offering to God. Their drink offering, strong drink poured out, half a hin of wine, which would be about 3 liters of wine for 1 bull, 1/3 of a hin for a ram, and 1/4 of a hin for a lamb. And so all of these will be fine if you had a hin of wine. And the burnt offering that goes up for each month throughout the months of the year. Each month throughout the months, and this would be at the beginning of the months, right? At the beginning of the months. How do they know? When does the month begin? Well, when they see the moon disappears the month has ended. When the moon starts to appear, the month starts. And they are all very visual, very visual. Now I have something else that I want to highlight to you in this last verse of 15 here. It says, one kid of the goats as a sin offering to the Lord shall be offered besides the regular burnt offering and its drink offering. And hence, this is what I have to say about verse 15. One kid of the goat. One kid of the goat literally means the male of the goat's family, and this would be a male kid as a baby within 1 year, right? Within 1 year, but it's of the goats. And goats are always used as sin offering. Sheep, on the other hand, is used as a peace offering. So this is the highlight that we need to pay attention in book of Leviticus, in the book of Numbers, everywhere. Whenever you see the Day of Atonement, it's always goats. And so sin offering has to do with goats of the first year, male. And when you see peace offering, it's generally with rams or sheep or male sheep for peace offering, never for sin offering. And this is on top. So this word besides literally means in addition. In addition. So every day you already have sunrise, sunset offerings. Then on the seventh day, you've got additional 2 offerings. At the beginning of the month, on top of that, you have 2 young bulls, 1 ram, 7 lambs, and the whole ritual. So what is God trying to do? God wants them to know that at the beginning of the month, that's where you start to count. You need to start to count in the beginning of every month. And then every day you have the offerings as well. In verse 16, now it says on the 14th day of the first month. This would be the first month is the head of the year. The head of the year. The first month. And this would be the month of Nisan or Aviv. Please refer to Exodus chapter 12. So on the 14th day of that month of Nisan, it is the Pesach of the Lord, which was last week, right? The Pesach of the Lord. On the 15th day, which is the next day of this same month, is the feast of unleavened bread, eaten for 7 days. And so what you have is that on the 14th, you've got the Pesach. On the 15th to the 21st, this is also the feast of unleavened bread. And because it's called unleavened bread, that's what they eat. They eat unleavened bread during the feast of unleavened bread. Now, back in Exodus chapter 12, verses 1 to 20, we have that discussion. It also tells us in verses 19 and 20 about the first day of that period, which is the 15th day. It is a holy gathering. It is a holy gathering that you shall do no customary work. What do you mean you do no customary work? This really means the usual business. Usual business. literally means things that you are in employment. If you are one who is a tailor, you stop tailoring. If you're one who chisels wood, you stop chiseling wood. If you're one to do work with masonry, then you stop doing masonry. That is what it means to do no customary work or no usual business. It is okay if you were to cook for the family to eat, because that's providing for the family for subsistence. Verse 19, and you shall present an offering. Now, what do you mean to present an offering? The word present here is approach God with an offering made by fire as a burnt offering to the Lord. So you approach God by a burn or a fire offering. We could say that as well. It's a fire offering. And what God wants on the first day, which is the 15th day, 2 young bulls, 1 adult ram, 7 baby lambs in the first year. Make sure they are without blemish. It goes without saying. This really tells us how you treat God, that He is special. He is a holy God. And so the animals are without blemish. Then we find that there is a grain offering, a fine flour mixed with oil, 3/10 offered for a bull, 2/10 for a ram, 1/10 for each of the 7 rams or baby lambs. Now, finally, we are reading this like another first day of the month. Also, 1 goat. Verse 22, this is a he goat as a sin offering to make atonement for you. And so on the 15th of the month, now that they are almost approaching getting into the promised land, additional instructions are given. Yes, you make a sin offering with 1 goat, and that's for your atonement on the first day of the Feast of Unleavened Bread. Verse 23, you shall offer these besides the first burnt offering is the morning, which is for a regular offering. In this manner, you shall offer the offering made by fire daily for 7 days as a spirit of satisfaction to the Lord. It shall be offered besides the regular burnt offering and its drink offering. So what's happening here is that on top of the regular day and night offering, if this happens to be on the 15th day, they will add on this. They will add on this. Now, if this 15th day is also the Sabbath, they will add on top of this the Sabbath as well. So there are more offerings to be made. Verse 25, on the 7th day, you shall have a holy convocation. You shall do no customary work. And so once you come to the 21st day of that month, which is the 7th day of that 7 days Feast of Unleavened Bread, you shall all come together, and you are not to do your business, your regular work. Verse 26. Also on the day of the first fruits. The day of the first fruits is also known as the weeks, right? When you bring a new grain offering to the Lord at your weeks. So what you see here is there is an A and this is a B. On the day of the first fruits will be 7 Sabbaths after the Passover and on that next day, right? That's how it's counted. When you shall bring a new grain offering to the Lord at your feast of weeks. This feast of weeks is Shavuot. the Feast of Weeks. And you shall all come together as a special gathering. You also shall do no regular business. You shall approach God by giving a burnt offering as a spirit of satisfaction, a sweet aroma to God. 2 young bulls, 1 ram, 7 rams in their first year, baby rams. And their grain offering of fine flour mixed with olive oil, 3/10 of an ephah for each bull, 2/10 for a ram, 1/10 for each of the 7 lambs. Also, that's another one here. Every time you see this special offering, 1 kid of the goats, a baby goat, to make atonement for you as a sin offering. Understand that they are without blemish, perfect. You shall present them with their drink offerings besides, in addition to, right? The regular burnt offering with its grain offering. So you have the day and night, every day. And then you have the seventh day. Then you have the first day. Then you have the 15th day where of the first month where it's the unleavened bread. Then you have the Shavuot. All of them has the same. The special offering are all the same. But when they overlap, you just do one on top of another. In Numbers 28, begins a few chapters to talk about what God wants them to do. Again, as we come to the close of chapter 28, I draw your attention to the fact that it's not just in the mere details of the rituals that the Israelites are to pay attention to. For us today, since we are not making all these offerings, we are looking at what kind of a God is he telling about himself. He is a detailed God. He has specific requirements, but these are not over the top difficult to do. These are for the priests and the Levites to do, and the sons of Israel is to stand back and watch. And the priest is supposed to know exactly what needs to be done. And so the priest will lead the charge to represent the people to make daily sacrifices, weekly sacrifices, first of month sacrifices, on the first month of the year, on the 15th of the month, sacrifices. Comes to Shavuot will be another sacrifice. And then, of course, in chapter 29, you will see other feasts that comes along. It's about God's time. You are not to decide when and how or who. God's land, God's rules. God's offerings, God's rules. What to offer, how to offer, who to offer, what to do when you offer, when you do it. They are God's rules. So what do we see God now as? He is a God of details. He is testing the people every time they do a ritual. He is testing them to see if they would listen to God. In the book of Malachi, the priests did not listen to God. And so God had a retribution to bring upon them. And so this is so important in Numbers chapter 28, that everything we have read is about who God is. And if the Israelites or the sons of Israel truly treat God as Elohim, then they will do exactly as he says. And with this, we come to the end of Numbers chapter 28.